the Treaty of Lisbon. And when I should give you an insight as to how much legislation is behind the Treaty of Lisbon, I think you might be shocked. But you're not alone at the moment. I mean, Ireland actually does have some support here, because Lech Kaczynski in Poland has refused to sign the treaty, calling it pointless, and he says he's waiting for the Irish question to be resolved. So a no vote will effectively brace his stand against the treaty. Now, both Polish houses have effectively sanctioned the treaty, so at the end of the day, if he's replaced and when he's out of office, there's a very good possibility that the new president, of course, will be selected on the basis that he's pro-EU. Also the same with Václav Klaus. Both houses in the Czech parliament have now approved the treaty, but he's basically saying, even when he was holding the presidency of the EU, he's saying, no way, we're not signing this. This takes away Czech sovereignty. I mean, the Czech Republic, of course, has only been a nation for what, barely 20 years. And now they're on the point, having lived under Soviet oppression for so long, having achieved self-determination, and now they're about to give it away to federalist Europe. To some extent, it's similar with Ireland, It had self-determination, ostensibly, since 1916? And, here it is, no, a bit longer than that. 22. And, here it is, potentially going to be given away on a ballot. Here's probably the best website, I think. It's for me, it's one of the most comprehensive websites that explains the EU succinctly, without sort of getting bogged down in jargon. And it's wethepeople.ie. And of course, I've taken this graphic from their website because, this guy has been promised the presidency. I mean, again, I gave a presentation, fortunately it was recorded, back in October, I think it was, 2007, where I stated categorically that Tony Blair was going to be the first EU president and had been promised that. Now, it wasn't rocket science again, because this was the clue. Tony Blair was talking about becoming a Catholic, converting to Catholicism, prior to his handing over the premiership to Gordon Brown. Now, he couldn't do it before because the UK cannot have a Catholic Prime Minister. Right? I mean, the UK, separated from the Catholic Church, as a Protestant country, will never have a Catholic Prime Minister. You can have a Jewish Prime Minister, a Protestant, an atheist, but never a Catholic. So he couldn't become a Catholic while he's in office. But as soon as he was out of office, of course, he ramped up, the faith issue, and then said that he was going to convert to Catholicism. Well, the moment he converted, that for me was the moment that it became crystal clear that he was going to be a shoo-in for the first EU presidency, because the EU is ostensibly a Catholic entity. And I doubt very much whether we will see a Protestant president in the EU anytime soon. And of course, so another thing here is that a yes vote is also a vote for Tony Blair as president. And if it does go to a yes vote, there's the very strong possibility that this guy becomes president of the EU, the first president of the EU, by the first quarter of next year. And he has the opportunity to serve two and a half year terms. So he could be in the role for 5 years. Now the guy is a psychopath. He is a psychopath and a sociopath. There's enough about his track record, and we'll look at some of that, as you can see here. But it's a classic stitch up here. Brown's support for Blair as President of Europe is out of the bag. Not that anybody was surprised by that. The question is, did Lord Mandy twist the PM's arm? Well, Mandelson, of course, who was the EU Trade Commissioner, has now come back into the EU to control Gordon Brown and prop up Gordon Brown. Mandelson is effectively the UK Prime Minister right now, but he's also making sure that nothing occurs in the UK to damage Blair's chances of becoming EU President. This was from The Sun yesterday, and this is from an Irish commentator, Fergus Shanahan. And there's a paragraph there that I think is extremely astute. It says, forget about the recession for a moment. 10 days from now, our future is likely to change forever. On October the 2nd, Ireland has its second vote on the wretched Lisbon Treaty. If as expected, it says yes, the treaty handing over our Parliament's ancient power to Brussels will almost certainly be law here before Christmas. Brussels will have won at last, and Tony Blair will be awaiting his expected coronation as EU President. Now, I can assure you that the vast majority of people in the UK find that absolutely abhorrent. But apathy and willful ignorance rule today. And so what are they going to do about it? Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, because they're totally sort of caught up in the system. But you know, if you think that this guy is going to be president and he isn't going to maximise, just like he did in the UK, I mean, in the space of 10 years, he totally destroyed 800 years of legal history in the UK. You know, now, few people would argue that the parliamentary system with the House of Lords needed some reform, but he effectively neutered it, and nobody turned a hair. So here he is, a smarmy but brilliant actor, a superb actor. I mean, he makes Obama look like the amateur that he is. You know, this guy has the panache to carry it off. You know, he has the ability to recall key points and deliver them as though they are absolutely embedded in his being. Even though probably half an hour after he's given a talk, he's got no recollection of what he just said. But that's a lot better than Obama, because Obama will walk straight off stage and has no recollection because he's just read it from his teleprompters. You know, but this is the issue, it's unelected. Yeah, a lot of people still perceive the EU to be a democracy because you're electing MEPs, whereas I'm going to explain a little later. When you elect your MEP has no more influence over the running of Europe than your trade union representative does over the running of a company. The MEP, the body of MEPs, is purely consultative. And then it doesn't have to be consulted on pretty much anything. You know, it's almost up to the MEPs to dig and find out what's going on. And then when they uncover something, or their researchers uncover something, you know, to go and sort of kick up about it. But of course they're not going to kick up, because the same situation has been created in Europe as was created in the UK, where you just make damn sure that the expenses trough is so deep, and you encourage them to bury their nose in it, so that it's not in their best interests to kick up any stink, and they'll just go along with the flow. This is a dream, this is a vision that I have, because I really hope that I get the opportunity to see this picture in real life at some point, you know, in the future. I mean, the guy is a war criminal. There is absolutely no other way to describe him. You know, if we look at the terms of Nuremberg and the statements that were made in Nuremberg, this guy has effectively contravened all of that by being party to 2 aggressive wars and, of course, deliberately lying about the intelligence that led to certainly the war in Iraq. You know, he was required by the US to come up with some supporting evidence. He came up with his 45 minutes of doom, and then we know that Alistair Campbell was tasked with actually putting together the dodgy dossier, which we know was cobbled from an Iraqi PhD student's thesis that was written in the immediate aftermath of the First Gulf War. And even when that became apparent, there was no shame. You know, under previous administrations, there'd have been some pride that, you know, and that they'd been caught red-handed and they resigned. But here it's like, oh, so what? So we lied. What are you going to do about it? Nada. And then, of course, pressure from the public and the press says, you know, there has to be an inquiry over the course of political decisions that were taken to lead us into war. And initially, it was stated that this would be held in private. You know, you can do a whitewash in public, but we don't need to have it in private. So again, pressure was brought about to hold the inquiry in public. But of course it transpires that Blair was very much behind the whole deal of trying to make sure that the inquiry was held in private. And this was a very